这里是澳洲中文电视台。
We need to get to a position where Australian firms are investing in Asia.
新晋当选的新州 Kogarah 选区议员柯明斯5月12日在他的就职演说上提议，希望将汉语普通话教育纳入新州的中小学教学大纲，作为强制教学的科目之一。目前他的提议还未被党派采纳，仍属于个人观点。5月19日，澳洲中文电视台在柯明斯位于 Kogarah 的办公室中就此事对他进行了专访。
Current support is strong, I think, and very, very encouraging from the state government. Federally, I'm very, very concerned. The previous Labor government released a white paper called Australia in the Asian Century, which was really a document designed to get the country ready for engagement with Asia. That recommended that we learn 4 languages: Hindi, Japanese, Mandarin and Indonesian. Now, I think we should just learn Mandarin, but this was a good first step. This was 4 languages. Not only is the current federal government not pursuing that white paper, they've taken it down from their website. It's almost impossible to get on the internet. It's no longer on any government website. If politicians are not pushing the envelope, if they're not coming up with new ideas, if they're not pushing politicians and the public out of their comfort zone, then great things and big policy changes will never happen. So this is not government policy, this is my idea. I'm a recently elected member of the New South Wales Parliament, and on a personal level I think it's my duty to raise issues that I think are important for the community and for the state, and more broadly for the country. So it's a long process to get this implemented in terms of the curriculum, but we have to start today. So the first thing is, it's proposed. The second point is, after it's an idea, it needs to be adopted by one of the 2 major political parties as an initiative. I'll be pushing to make it Labor Party policy before the next state election. If it becomes Labor Party policy, then it's implemented. The government moves a piece of legislation and changes the guidelines around the New South Wales curriculum, and we would have to hire more Chinese-speaking teachers, we would have to hire more Chinese educators, and we'd have to get the best practice, the world's best practice, for how you educate young children into learning a second language. Now, none of these things are easy. In fact, all of them are hard. They're very difficult things to do. What my wife and I have decided to do is to give our children access to Mandarin, but in their spare time, on weekends, in a Chinese language course. But that's not really the point. I mean, I'm not doing this because I want my own kids to speak Mandarin. I want every kid to be able to speak Mandarin. One thing that would happen if our kids learned a second language is that they would have a lot more empathy for Asian culture, because learning language gives you a philosophy about that particular culture. You learn phrases and words and poetry that are not directly applicable or can't be easily translated into English. So we're going to have to employ a lot of Chinese speakers to get this done, many, and it will cost money, and it will be a drag on the budget bottom line. But we can't afford not to. We simply can't afford not to, because once the mining boom runs out, once Australia's natural resources are tapped, once, for example, China's 7% growth starts to ease off, the new normal in China has Beijing telling the world that you can expect a sustained but lower level of growth, which means they're going to have less call on Australia's iron ore and less call on Australia's gas and coal. So we need to get ready for an Asian century that isn't reliant on Australian natural resources, and that means we need to spend money on language classes today. In specific terms, we basically need to give 8 out of every 100 hours in primary school to Mandarin for this to happen, which is a lot of time and a lot of effort. But that can happen. You can get Chinese speakers into our primary schools within a couple of years to start rolling out the process. In high school, from years 7 to years 10, you need 100 hours a year learning Mandarin, 100 hours a year. So these things are technical details, but we know the range of the challenge. We know the scale. For example, we know how high Everest is. If we were to roll this out tomorrow, We know how much it would cost. We know how many teachers we need to employ. We know that we need to get 100 hours a year from 7 to 10 into our high school kids in order for them to have a working understanding of Mandarin. I just think we need to get on with the challenge. It's an important question. My sense is, and this was a difficult decision for me to come to, but the more you fracture the learning processes, the more different languages are spoken, the less economies of scale that you get, so it costs more because you have to roll out many different languages. And secondly, you blunt the impact of Australian kids being able to speak a single language. My great dream, the great dream I think for Australia would be if a Chinese businessman in mainland China saw a young Australian 20 or 30 years from now, they'd know they were smart, they know they'd be hungry and ambitious, and they know that they would speak Mandarin. If we have young kids learning so many different languages, we blunt the impact of a government policy designed to get Australia moving.